Today, we are going to take a visual journey back in time to untangle that complex web of people and power that really define the world of the New Testament. So let's just dive right in. So, if you've ever read through the New Testament and found your head spinning with all these different names, Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots, you are not alone. It can feel like trying to keep track of a huge, confusing cast of characters. But don't worry, we're going to sort it all out. And this is how we're going to do it. This single image right here is going to be our guide. It does a brilliant job of breaking down all the major groups of the era. So think of it as our visual key, our cheat sheet for understanding who was who on this very crowded historical stage. So here's how we'll break it down. First, we'll set the scene. Then we'll meet the keepers of the faith, followed by the major players in politics. After that, we'll look at the everyday people who made up the fabric of society, and finally, we'll pull it all together to see the big picture. Okay, so to start, you really have to appreciate just how diverse and honestly how tense this society was. It was a place of incredibly deep tradition, but it was also simmering with change and conflict. Now, probably the easiest way to get a handle on all this is to group these figures by what they actually did. We're going to look at them through three main lenses: their religious authority, their political power, and their role in day-to-day life. Let's kick things off with the groups who really shaped the spiritual life of the time. These were the leaders, the scholars, and the teachers who were in charge of interpreting the law and traditions for everyone else. All right, let's focus in on the top row of our image. What's the first thing that jumps out at you? For me, it's the stark contrast between these first two groups, the Pharisees on the left and the Sadducees on the right. I mean, just their clothes and their posture tell us so much about them. And this chart just spells it out perfectly. Look at the Pharisees. You see the prayer shawl, the scroll. They're clearly presented as scholars of the law. But then you have the Sadducees in their ornate priestly robes, which just screams wealth and aristocracy. You know, the class that was tied to the temple. So one group's power came from knowledge, from study, while the others came from institutional power and money. And it wasn't just about class. They had major disagreements on core beliefs, like the resurrection, which the Pharisees strongly believed in and the Sadducees completely rejected. And right next to them, you've got the rabbis. It's right there in the name. Rabbi literally means teacher. A lot like the Pharisees, they were all about studying and teaching the scriptures, and they were absolutely vital as educators in their communities. Now, all this religious authority didn't just exist in a bubble. Oh no, it was all happening inside a really tense political landscape. This whole era was defined by Roman occupation, and that created deep divisions between those who decided to work with them and those who decided to fight back. And if we look at our guide again, you can see the two absolute extremes of that political world. You've got the Herodians looking all royal and established, and then right under them, the Zealots, who are pictured in the middle of some kind of revolutionary action. That visual contrast is just immediate and so powerful. Let's look a little closer. The Herodians' royal clothes, the crown, it marks them as supporters of Herod's dynasty, and that meant being pro-Roman. But the Zealots, their dynamic, action-packed pose captures their identity perfectly, a militant revolutionary movement dead set on overthrowing that exact same authority. So we're not just talking about different political parties here. These were fundamentally opposing forces. Okay, so let's shift gears from the high-level politics and religion and look at the groups that made up the fabric of everyday life, from the administrators and moneymen to the different cultural groups living in the region. First up are the scribes. Just look at the tools of their trade, the scroll and the pen. These guys were so much more than just copyists. They were the literate professionals, the experts in the law. They drafted legal documents, they interpreted religious texts. Basically, they were the essential record keepers and legal minds of their entire society. And next to them, we have the publicans. You might know them better as tax collectors. And the visual clue here is, well, it's not subtle, is it? It's the pile of coins on the table. Their job was to collect taxes for the Roman Empire, a role that definitely made them powerful, but also made them deeply unpopular with the local population, who saw them as collaborators. And finally, our image makes sure to include the Samaritans, and their presence here is a crucial reminder that this world wasn't all one thing. The Samaritans were a distinct cultural and religious group, and they were often in conflict with their Jewish neighbors, which just adds another fascinating layer of complexity to the whole era. So let's pull all of these threads together now. When you see all of these groups in one place, you really start to get a feel for the incredibly dynamic and often very tense environment they all created together. what we've really seen is a society just filled with contrasts. I mean, in religion, you had the scholars versus the powerful priests. In politics, it was Roman allies against fierce rebels. In society, you had respected administrators versus widely disliked tax collectors. And woven through all of that were these very distinct and sometimes clashing cultural identities. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's actually pretty simple. You can't fully appreciate the stories of the New Testament without understanding the cast of characters. These groups, with all their competing beliefs, their conflicts, and their ambitions, they literally formed the stage on which all of those historical events played out. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Whether we're looking at ancient history or even a modern movie, how does knowing the full cast, all their motivations and conflicts, change the way we understand the story? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.